The house felt different after Daniel Harper died. It was not just quiet, it felt as if the walls themselves were waiting for a voice that would never return. Emily Harper moved slowly through the kitchen one gray morning, holding a cup of coffee. She had forgotten to drink. Outside, Seattle's winter rain fell steadily, tapping against the glass like gentle reminders of time passing. 3 months had gone by since the funeral, yet every day still felt unreal. She often caught herself listening for Daniel's footsteps or expecting him to walk in with his warm smile and tired eyes after work. When the silence answered instead, her chest tightened all over again. Emily had been strong during the funeral. Friends and neighbors praised her calmness, calling her brave. But bravery disappeared once everyone left. Grief lived in ordinary moments, folding laundry alone, cooking meals for one, or seeing Daniel's reading glasses still resting on the nightstand. Nights were the hardest. Sleep came late and left early, filled with memories that felt too alive to belong to thee. Past Daniel had been her partner for 22 years. He was steady, patient, and kind in ways that made life feel safe. Losing him felt like losing direction itself. Emily was only 48, yet she felt suddenly old. As if the future had quietly closed its doors. The only person who seemed to understand her silence was Ryan. Ryan Harper, Daniel's son from his first marriage, had entered Emily's life when he was 11 years old, shy, polite, and unsure how to treat the woman who married his father. Emily had never tried to become his mother, just simply treated him with warmth and respect, helping with homework, attending school events, and listening whenever he needed someone. Over the years, their relationship grew naturally. By the time Ryan left for college, they shared easy conversations and mutual trust. After Daniel's death, Ryan began calling almost every day at first. Emily welcomed the calls. Hearing a familiar voice eased the loneliness. Ryan asked simple questions: whether she had eaten, how she slept, if she needed help with anything around the house. His concern felt genuine, comforting. Still, she noticed something different in his tone. He sounded protective, almost restless. As if distance bothered him more than grief alone could explain. One evening, as the sky darkened early in rain, blurred the neighborhood lights, her phone rang again. "Hey, Emily," Ryan said softly. His voice carried exhaustion. "I was thinking," he continued after a pause, "maybe I should come stay for a while, just until things feel normal." Again, Emily hesitated. She appreciated the offer, yet something about sharing the house again felt strange. This home had always belonged to her and Daniel as a couple. Letting someone else step into that space felt like opening a door she wasn't ready to unlock. "You don't need to worry about me," she replied gently. "I know," Ryan said, "but I want to." The sincerity in his voice left little room for argument. 2 days later, Ryan stood at her front door with a suitcase in one hand and a hesitant smile. He looked older than she remembered. Grief had changed him. The boyish energy he once carried was replaced by quiet seriousness. When Emily hugged him, she felt how tightly he held on, as if grounding himself. "It's good to see you," she said. "You too," he answered, though his eyes lingered on her face. Longer than usual. Life adjusted quickly after his arrival. The house no longer felt empty. Ryan woke early, making coffee before she came downstairs. He fixed small things Daniel had always meant to repair: a loose cabinet hinge, a flickering porch light, a squeaky door. Emily noticed how carefully he moved through the home, respecting every memory tied to his father. They cooked dinner together most nights. Sometimes they talked about Daniel, sharing stories that made them laugh unexpectedly. Other times they sat quietly, comfortable in shared sadness. Grief felt lighter when divided between two people. One evening, while preparing pasta, Ryan accidentally dropped a spoon, and they both laughed harder than the situation deserved. The laughter surprised Emily. It had been weeks since she laughed. Without guilt. Ryan smiled at her. "Dad loved hearing you laugh." The words warmed her but also hurt. "I miss him every day," she admitted. "Me too." Orion said softly. As days passed, Emily began noticing small changes she couldn't quite explain. Orion paid close attention to her moods. She seemed tired. He suggested walks. If she skipped meals, he gently insisted they cook together. His care felt deeper than simple responsibility. At first, she assumed he was trying to honor his father by looking after her. That explanation comforted her. But slowly, moments began to feel different. During conversations, Ryan watched her carefully, as if trying to understand thoughts she hadn't spoken aloud. When she laughed, his expression softened in a way she couldn't ignore. Sometimes silence between them carried an unfamiliar tension, subtle yet undeniable. Emily dismissed the feeling each time it appeared. Grief could confuse emotions, she told herself. Loneliness could make ordinary closeness seem meaningful. Still, something inside her grew uneasy. One afternoon, they walked through a nearby park where Daniel used to jog. Fallen leaves covered the paths, and cold air brushed against their faces. Ryan spoke about his work in Vancouver, but eventually the conversation shifted. "Do you ever think about starting over?" he asked suddenly. Emily looked at him, surprised. "Starting over? Like building a new life," he clarified. She smiled faintly. "I haven't thought that far ahead." Ryan nodded but seemed unsatisfied with the answer. That night, a heavy storm knocked out the neighborhood's power. Darkness filled the house, broken only by candlelight Emily placed around the living room. Rain pounded the roof while thunder echoed in the distance. They sat across from each other, wrapped in blankets. Listening to the storm, the flickering candles softened Ryan's features, casting shadows that made him look both familiar and unfamiliar at once. Emily felt strangely aware of his presence, the closeness, the quiet breathing between pauses in conversation. "You shouldn't be alone here," Ryan said suddenly. She smiled gently. "I'm not alone. You're here." He hesitated. "That's not what I mean." Something in his tone made her heart beat faster. Ryan stood and walked toward the window, running a hand through his hair as if struggling with a decision. Emily sensed tension building, though she didn't understand why. "There's something I need to say," he admitted. Her stomach tightened. He turned toward her, eyes filled with emotion she had never seen directed at her before. "After Dad died," he began slowly, "I started thinking about a lot of things, about life, but what matters." Emily listened carefully, unsure where the conversation was going. "And being here with you," he continued, voice unsteady, "made me realize something I tried to ignore." A quiet fear rose inside her. "Ryan," she said softly, "you don't have to. I do." He interrupted gently, "Because pretending isn't working anymore." The storm outside grew louder, thunder shaking the windows as if echoing the moment. He took a deep breath. "I think I've fallen in love with you." The words landed heavily in the room. For a second, Emily thought she misunderstood. Her mind searched for another meaning, another explanation that would make sense of what she heard. But Ryan's expression held sincerity, vulnerability, and fear. Her heart pounded. Memories flashed through her mind, helping him with school projects, cheering at his graduation, watching Daniel proudly hug his son. The idea felt impossible, wrong, overwhelming. "Ryan," she whispered, unable to form complete thoughts. "I know how it sounds," he said quickly. "I fought it. I told myself it was grief or confusion, but it didn't go away." Emily stood slowly, trying to steady herself. "You're grieving," she said. "We both are. Emotions get mixed up." "I thought that too," he replied, "but this feels real." Silence stretched between them, thick with uncertainty. Emily felt torn between shock and something she refused to examine too closely, a warmth she had noticed growing during their shared days, a comfort she hadn't felt since Daniel's death. That realization frightened her more than his confession. She turned away, trying to breathe normally. Everything she believed about family, loyalty, and identity felt suddenly fragile. I can't talk about this tonight, she said finally, voice trembling. Ryan nodded, regret crossing his face. Understand. They retreated to separate rooms. But sleep never came to Emily. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every recent moment, every laugh, every conversation, every look she had dismissed. Had she unknowingly encouraged this closeness? Had loneliness changed her too? Guilt mixed with confusion. Yet beneath it all was a quiet truth she struggled to deny. Ryan's presence had brought life back into the house. He had made her feel seen again, not as a widow frozen in grief, but as a person still capable of connection. Morning. Light slowly filled the room, ending a night that felt endless. Emily sat up, realizing one thing with certainty. Nothing between them could return to how it had been before, and whatever decision she made next would shape both their lives forever. Morning arrived quietly, but Emily Harper felt as if the world had changed overnight. Pale sunlight slipped through the curtains, touching the familiar furniture that suddenly felt unfamiliar. She sat at the kitchen table long before Ryan woke, up holding a warm mug between her hands. The house smelled of coffee and rain, yet her thoughts refused to settle. His confession echoed again and again in her mind. She had expected grief to be the hardest part of losing Daniel, but she had never imagined facing a decision that would challenge everything she believed about love, loyalty, and herself. She stared at the backyard where Daniel once worked every weekend, trimming hedges and planting flowers with careful patience. Memories came gently, not painfully this time. She remembered how he used to tell her that life was short and people should never waste time hiding their feelings. The thought made her chest tighten. Would he understand what was happening now? Or would he feel betrayed? Emily closed her eyes, realizing she could not answer that question. The past no longer had a voice. Footsteps approached behind her. Ryan entered the kitchen slowly, as if unsure whether he was welcome there anymore. His usual confidence was gone. He looked nervous, carrying the weight of regret. "I'm sorry about last night," he said immediately. "I shouldn't have put you in that position." Emily studied him carefully. He wasn't demanding anything. He wasn't expecting forgiveness or agreement. He simply looked honest. A man afraid he had ruined something important. "Sit down," she said gently. He obeyed, keeping distance between them at the table. Silence stretched for a moment before she spoke again. "What you said shocked me," she admitted. "Not because you're wrong for feeling something, but because I never imagined we would stand here having this conversation." Ryan nodded, eyes lowered. "I loved your father deeply," she continued. "That doesn't disappear." "I know," he said softly. "I'm not trying to replace him." His answer surprised her again. There was no jealousy in his voice, only respect. Emily realized then that this situation was not simple attraction or confusion. It was born from shared loss, long history, and emotional closeness neither of them had planned. "We can't make decisions while we're hurting," she said firmly. "Grief changes people." Ryan looked up. "So, what happens?" Now she took a deep breath. "Now we slow down. We give space. If what you feel is real, it won't disappear because of distance." Relief crossed his face, mixed with sadness. He nodded. "I can do that." That afternoon felt strangely calm. They spoke normally, cooked dinner together, and avoided emotional topics. Yet everything felt more honest than before. The unspoken tension had turned into careful awareness. 2 days later, Ryan packed his suitcase again. At the door, he hesitated. "Thank you for listening," he said. Emily smiled gently. "Thank you for being honest." He left for Vancouver and the house. Returned to silence, but this time the silence felt different. It was no longer empty. It held questions waiting for answers that the following weeks became a period of rebuilding for Emily. She forced herself to step outside routines shaped by grief. She joined a local book club, something Daniel had encouraged her to do years earlier. She volunteered at a community center, helping organize events and meeting people who knew nothing about her past. Slowly, she rediscovered parts of herself she had forgotten: her humor, her independence, her curiosity about life. Ryan kept his promise. He didn't call constantly. Messages were simple and respectful. Sometimes he shared updates about work or photos of places he visited. Their conversations felt balanced, free from pressure. Distance gave Emily clarity. She realized her sadness after. Daniel's death had not only been about losing a husband, it had been about losing identity. For years, she had defined herself through marriage, routine, and shared plans. Without Daniel, she felt invisible. Ryan's presence had awakened something unexpected: the feeling of being seen again as a woman, not just a widow. At first, that realization filled her with guilt. But as weeks passed, guilt softened into understanding. Loving again did not erase love that came before. Human hearts were not limited spaces. One evening, while walking home after a book club meeting, Emily noticed she was smiling without forcing it. The realization surprised her. She was healing. Later that night, Ryan called. "I'm visiting Seattle next month," he said carefully. "I wanted to ask if it's okay to see you." Emily paused, noticing her heartbeat quicken, not with fear but anticipation. "Yes," she answered softly. "I'd like that." When the day arrived, she felt nervous in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She chose a simple blue dress, then laughed at herself for overthinking. Still, she wanted to feel confident. Ryan met her at a small cafe near the waterfront. When she saw him walking toward her, she noticed something had changed. He seemed calmer, grounded, no longer driven by emotional urgency. Distance had matured his feelings rather than weakening them. They greeted each other with a warm but careful hug. Conversation flowed easily. They talked about work, travel, books, and memories of Daniel without discomfort. For the first time since his confession, Emily felt peace instead of confusion. After coffee, they walked along the beach. The sky glowed orange as the sun lowered toward the horizon. Waves moved slowly, creating a steady rhythm that matched her thoughts. Ryan broke the silence gently. "I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know my feelings didn't come from loneliness. Time didn't change them." Emily stopped walking and looked at him closely. There was patience in his eyes, not desperation. He had given her space, respected her boundaries, and allowed her to find clarity on her own. She realized she was no longer seeing him as the boy she once helped raise. Life had shaped him into someone thoughtful and kind, someone capable of deep respect. "I was afraid," she admitted quietly. "Afraid of what people would think. Afraid of what it meant about me." Ryan nodded. "That makes sense." Watched the waves for a moment before speaking again. "But during these months alone," she said, "I realized something. Loving again doesn't betray the past. It means the past taught us how to love well." Her words surprised even herself. Ryan remained silent, giving her space to continue. "I will always love your father," she said. "That part of my life is real and important. But my story didn't end when he died. I just didn't know what came next." The wind moved gently around them. Emily felt calm clarity settle inside her. She reached out slowly and took Ryan's hand, not impulsively, but with deliberate understanding. "This doesn't replace him," she said softly. "It's something new." Ryan's expression softened, relief and emotion crossing his face at once. They continued walking, hands loosely joined, neither rushing the moment. There were still challenges ahead: conversations with family, judgment from outsiders, complicated emotions they would need to navigate carefully. But for the first time, Emily felt confident in her own choice rather than afraid of it. Weeks turned into months. Their relationship grew slowly, built on honesty and patience. They spent time learning each other again, setting boundaries and respecting shared history. Ryan never pressured her, and Emily never ignored the importance of their past connection. As family, instead, they created something based on mutual understanding. Emily noticed how laughter returned fully to her life. She traveled again, explored new places, and allowed herself to imagine a future she once believed impossible. Grief no longer defined her days. Memories of Daniel became warm rather than painful, part of her foundation, not a chain holding her still, one evening, standing by the same kitchen window where she once cried alone. Emily realized how far she had come. The house no longer felt haunted by absence, it felt alive again. She understood then that love was not a single chapter, but a continuing story. Some people entered life to teach stability. Others arrived later to remind hearts how to begin again. Ryan joined her at the window, handing her a cup of tea. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She smiled gently. "That life surprises us," she said. "And sometimes the hardest moments lead us somewhere we never expected, but exactly where we need to be." Outside, the garden had begun to bloom again, for the first time since Daniel's passing. Emily felt no conflict inside her, only gratitude for what had been and hope for what was still unfolding. Her story had not ended with loss. It had simply changed direction, and this time she chose to walk forward without fear, allowing love in its unexpected, complicated, and beautiful form to guide her toward a future she once thought she would never have again.